Hi, guys! Welcome to the second episode of our Mind the Ways podcast, a series of fun get together where myself, Camille, and Jamie chat about mental well being and how to look after ourselves better. So each episode we'll be meeting and talking to people we know, people who got experience to share that can help us and manage our lives more easily. As a professional athletes, like we realized a long time ago, taking care of our mental well-being is just as important as taking care of our bodies and muscles. So we wanted to share what we've learned to help you to also be a better you together with us. So this week we are joined by Aaron Stadlin-Robbie. He has been running a business called Talking Mental for 4 years now. He is way more experienced on this like whole podcast and also mental health area than we are. So welcome. Round of applause. Thank you for being our
Wow.
first
Yay!
guest.
First
Welcome.
guest. And I
Yes.
just
Yeah.
feel so honored, that you mentioned professional athletes. I think it's true. Well, four of us in here.
Yeah. No, for real. Because there's one more thing about Aaron that we really wanted him to be on our podcast as our first guest is because he's bilingual. Like this is what we wanted to get to as well. Because we definitely can like go online and search for all your profiles in English. Do you mind if you can share a little bit, like introduce yourself a bit in Cantonese to our Cantonese speaking audience, if you don't mind?
Yeah. And I'm happy to do today as much bilingual as possible, but just letting all the audience know that I might be flip-flopping around. So as long as the
That's all
audience
good.
is not too harsh on me, I'm more than happy to give it a go. So
Okay.
I'll say hello 大家，我叫 Aaron，我咁我其實喺香港長大嘅，我媽咪香港人嚟嘅，爸爸咧紐西蘭人。咁我好希我好誒，即係好高興同阿 Camille、Steph 同埋 Jamie 一齊參加呢個Mind the Waves, which is an amazing name by the way, podcast。我今日好開心可以講埋我關於精神健康嘅經驗啦，同埋係咯，just so happy to be here，好開心，so thank you。
That's really good because like there's one thing about like our this group like Camille, Jamie, and I, it's that we want to cater like both the English speaking audience and also the Cantonese one because there are definitely different like the way that we speak, the way that we get around mental health issues are so different. So we want to cater all. That's like we're very greedy in that sense, but that is why we really want you to be our first guest and you have the experience in mental health for at least like you have established mental talking mental for 4 years. So can you share a little bit of the story how you get into the field? I heard that you are not from like you're not a profession, like your profession is not in mental health itself. So how did you get started in this field?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, mental health was never on my radar. It was
Mm,
something that I'm not educated about in school. And, talking about Hong Kong and specifically growing up here, and we'll get into that with the local language. And I applaud you for creating a platform with Cantonese because there isn't enough. So let me firstly say that there isn't enough around um, the local Hong Kong community around how we address mental health. So, firstly, that's great. With myself, how I got involved, there was no education around mental health. It was something that came across me. So, for me, I suffered through something called panic attacks and very severe anxiety. So, I didn't know what that was. And that came to me via an experience that was when I was crossing the road one time when I was in Shanghai, and all of a sudden, boom, it hit me. A panic attack hit me out of nowhere. And it was the scariest moment of my life. I had no control over what was going on. It was a complete sort of a takeover of my mind, my body, and I couldn't explain what was going on. And I had episodes for about 6 to 7 months consistently, and it would just spiral. It would just happen where you would get it, and then it would get worse and worse and worse, and then eventually about 10 to 20 minutes later, you would start to gain rational thought and you could come out of it. But you were still terrified as to what would happen next. So that's what happened to me. And then the whole mental health space opened up because obviously, as you do when something's wrong with you, you try to figure out what is wrong with you. And it was something that I couldn't explain. So I went to the doctors. They told me it was a vitamin B12 deficiency. I got misdiagnosed many times, which is also a big problem. And then it wasn't until I came back to Hong Kong and I saw a psychiatrist through my mum's contacts, because mum was at Zhongdai in Sha and she was teaching there. And she introduced me to one of her students who's a psychiatrist. And within 5 minutes of meeting him, he was like, "Oh, you have panic attacks, you have heavy anxiety. This is normal." And it was so lovely to hear that. Then the journey began. Then it was understanding, right, what is this? What has caused it? How can I explain it in layman's terms? And then the whole journey around talking mental was my own issues. How can I help myself get better? Who can I speak to? How can I speak to different experts? And the whole reason it started as a podcast was I couldn't afford to see these psychiatrists. They were so expensive. God, which is such a problem.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I started a podcast, and I could all of a sudden speak to them for free. And they were like, yeah, we'll talk to you. And I was like, yes, this is great. So during my podcast, when I was interviewing about issues, I was actually just my own problems, talking to them about my own problems. And that's how it started. And then from there, I noticed, and this is something that I'm sure you three will gather a lot, because now that you've put yourselves out there, is there's a lot of people that start asking you because they want to come, they see that you've been vulnerable enough or are in control enough of understanding your own emotions to talk about this. And then I started to getting pulled in different directions and started seeing what was happening, more specifically in Hong Kong, around the societal issues, what was happening around the stigma, where the gaps were in mental health. And then I shifted talking mental from being about me to being about what the audience was looking for. And that's where it all began.
Yeah, that's that's like a very like elaborated, and I guess we really see the similarities between you and us. It's because we don't come from a professional background either. Like I'm gonna like say this in Cantonese a little bit. Just 因為我覺得我哋三個女仔其實都係運動員啦，專業嘅運動員，但係好似有一種，亦都有一種 stigma 喺我哋，即係有一個標籤就係運動員一定係好 strong 嘅，佢哋一定係好 mentally tough 嘅，佢哋一定可以解決所有佢哋嘅問題，因為佢哋每一日都係咁努力咁樣去練習，做住同一樣嘅嘢，又好堅持咁樣，即係。所以但係其實我哋一路以嚟咁樣做咗咁耐運動員，然後其實中間遇到好多嘅問題咧，其實都係我哋自己去解決咯，都唔係有任何嘅其他一啲專業嘅人，其實係有幫到我哋去其實我哋有問題嘅時候，可以問下佢哋，可以點樣可以令到我哋自己可以渡過一啲難關嘅時候。其實我哋都係靠我哋自己嘅朋友，咁所以我哋三個就會覺得，其實真係，如果我哋一早嘅時候就可以同我哋嘅，用我哋嘅，我哋可以照顧我哋自己身體，同時間亦都可以照顧到我哋嘅精神健康嘅時候，其實兩樣嘢雙管齊下咧，係令到我哋成個 well-being，我哋成個人其實可以好簡，即係我諗作為運動員嘅話，就已經可以幫到我哋嘅。呢一個成個運動嘅表現又好啊，你作為之後可以點樣由運動員轉型去成為其他嘅人都好，咁所以我哋先至好想請 Aaron 今次嚟做我哋嘅第一個嘉賓啦。咁 which lead me to my second question is, well, you said it a little bit already, and so like we're gonna ask you like how like. Does Hong Kong have a mental problem like right now? What would you think is the biggest problem given we are speaking to the youth of Hong Kong as well? Is there like 我諗用喺廣東話嘅一個
好啊，
喺廣東話嘅一個
好啊，
用講法嚟講，我覺得因為係咯，我自己真係會覺得，就算我啦，即係 speaking for myself。就算我哋叫做 bilingual，識得用英文同中文講咧，嗰個即係我講 mental health 呢個字啦，同我講精神健康咧，已經係差好遠㗎啦。我個感受爭好遠，即係我覺得 mental health 係一個好 positive，好大家可以拎出嚟大家去傾嘅嘢。但係一講到精神健康、精神病、心理問題、心靈健康都好啦，就算呢個已經聽落去好好。不過都令到大家好驚嘅，即係大家香港人一聽到呢個字咧，就覺得哇唔好啦，唔好搞我，唔關我事嘅，我冇嘅，即刻就嗰個反應好快嘅，其實係。
係啊，你諗下而家你喺香港，你講埋呢啲字咧， 即係精神病嘅精神健康，你一定會好快咧諗到青山醫院啦。青山醫院黐線嘅喎，黐線嘅喎，咁你都知道啦。咁呢啲問題已經即係啱啱開始，你知道嘅 education 關於精神健康咧唔喺度嘅。其實喺香港，其實咧我覺得全世界咧關於精神健康 it's actually quite new， 但係咧最大嘅問題咧係即係關於香港嘅情況咧，香港 it's behind everywhere else。如果譬如咧你去咗英國啦、美國啦、澳洲啊、紐西蘭即係呢啲地方咧，佢已經係即係嗰啲 stigma 係已經講晒出嚟啦。咁個係變咗咧，個 mental health 咧係一個 positive 嘅嘢嚟嘅。即係譬如咧，OK，我哋講埋香港精神健康，大部分咧係 negative。咁最好嘅方法咧係翻到零啦，即係我哋叫 normal 啦，翻到零啦 ，right？ 你翻到零即係點咧 ？OK，我哋可以我可以可以翻工啦，我可以同個朋友傾偈啦，我 I can go back into society， 翻社會 and have no problem。但係咧，我覺得即係美國啊、英國嗰啲地方咧，佢哋而家喺傾緊咧係點解要停喺零嗰度咧？點解唔可以去到個 positive 嘅地方？其實用喺 is for a tool and for especially 你睇下你呢三個啦 ，you are Olympic athletes。Which is, well, joking aside, something I wish in my wildest dreams I could ever be, and I will never be that. So, 你哋三個 are at a level that is like for me incredible. But 我而家覺得即係全世界入邊咧，運動員咧 is actually becoming role models for the world， 因為佢哋 talking about 佢哋係講緊點可以用我個腦咧係幫我 increase 我嘅 performance。即係我最有壓力個時間 ，when I'm about to race， 我想即係我要I'm at school， 我要考試嗰陣時候咧 ，that's like time I need to perform。So how can I use my brain to train to perform in the toughest and most stressful environment? And when we use this language, that's when I think mental health in Hong Kong will change. Because right now, it's not good. 咁講埋香港嘅情況咧，關於精神健康咧 ，it's really poor. And it's poor in 3 different ways. 第一咧 and this is talking mental what we are trying to cover. So the 3 big areas, accessibility. 你而家喺香港咧，如果有自己個問題，你喺邊度開始揾嗰啲 resources 啊？你會直接行到 Google 嗰度，跟住你 search mental health Hong Kong，and then 突然之間出嚟Central Health in 喺中環嗰度啊，或者喺個哇and then 你撳入去嗰陣時候咧，2500蚊一個鐘，邊個有咁多錢？don't worry about it，我下次啦，I'm not going to think about it right now。So accessibility 邊度開始揾？同埋咧，你會唔會行到醫院啊？你會唔會行到嗰啲 psychiatrist 啊？你唔知邊度開始。第二咧係個 quality of care。quality of care 咧喺香港其實好大個問題，因為咧個 public system 嗰啲醫院咧，如果你即係譬如我啦，我去自己入醫院睇 ，OK， 我知道我有 depression， 我想睇個醫生。你可能要等2年喎。如果你唔係你唔係喺個你唔係個 urgent case， 喺香港佢哋有3個部分，有 urgent 啦、semi urgent 同埋個 normal case。咁 normal 嗰要可能等2年 ，semi urgent 可能要等30至40個星期。跟住咧，如果你 urgent 嘅話，即係最 urgent 咧，你要等可能7至14日。咁呢啲咧，你已經知道個 demand 係好 is very high， 但係個 resources in the public system 係好少。So there's a big problem。跟住第3咧係 stigma， 呢個咧，哇喺香港 ，we love the stigma of mental health。我個媽咪香港人啊。我哋都知道啦，關於精神健康一啲都唔傾呢啲嘢啦，都一定唔傾呢啲嘢啦。So this is a problem. And at school, we all went to school, no education on mental health. This next generation, this youth, is the first generation to go through really education around mental health. And you also think about 即係香港嘅情況。 COVID-19 made it worse for the world. But 你諗香港呢，講埋呢4年18年至而家啦，香港 has been in a tough place. So 譬如咧，你12至16歲 in normal circumstances is already hard to be 12 to 16. But imagine doing it over the last 4 years. That's really difficult. So it's no surprise we are seeing mental health problems in Hong Kong that are a really big problem. And we can talk about how I think it should change or what we need to, but the current situation,
Aaron, another question that I wanted to ask you was if you could tell us about this conference that you went to in Denmark and what you learned and how that shaped the evolution of what you're doing now.
Yeah, actually, thanks for bringing that up because that really changed our trajectory from what Talking Mental was to what it is now. It was an important trip for me. So how I got invited to go to this summit in Copenhagen was with the back of a charity that was in Hong Kong around an anti-stigma campaign. And on the back of that, I was lucky enough to be invited to go to Denmark. And what it was a summit of different mental health organizations from around the world coming together. And all it was to share ideas, to understand what was happening in different areas. And it woke me up in one of two ways. One was I was the only youngest person there. It was all very clinical. So it was a lot of people in the pharmaceutical field talking about specific drugs and the biology around what the drugs and the effect it had on the brain. And I'm just I don't understand what you're saying. And I don't know what we're doing here. What I'm doing here is especially. But what it did give me was understanding that's the disconnect. There's a lot of conversation in that realm and around very sort of high level ways a psychiatrist might talk to you, but for me there was a missing piece of the kind of everyday relatable language. So that's when that kind of triggered in my mind that actually there's that opportunity there. But secondly, and more importantly, it was really the first time where it started to draw me. I went to Copenhagen with Talking Mental helping me get better. I left with it not about me anymore. And the reason that it was because I started to see what was happening in different areas. So I started to understand what was happening in the US, what was happening in Australia, and understanding their problems. And I started to get into conversations, and people would ask me, "That's great what you're doing, but what next? What happens after you help yourself? What else are you doing?" And I was actually never thought about that. And when I started to see different trends, that's when I got interested to know what would happen in Hong Kong. So when I came back to Hong Kong, I read this 242-page document from the government, which was an amazing read. Highly recommend.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But what that gave me was an understanding of what the government in Hong Kong were looking for. And it was essentially a lot of the same problems that were happening around the world, but there was no way of kind of coming to sort of a solution to those problems as it were in Hong Kong as much. So it was that's how I changed it. And I went, okay, actually there's more traction and there's more need around that. And it was also coinciding, and I think it would be interesting to chat with you. Maybe it would be interesting to chat with you in 6 months or to come back on in 6 months time to hear about what personally happens to you that you've started this platform, because I didn't expect how emotional it would be that people would reach out, how much responsibility I felt from people opening up their problems. And it was sort of this, whoa, by me being open about it, it drew in a lot of that, and I wasn't prepared. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to get away from how it's just helping me to what can I do, really understand what is happening in society to start to pick apart the problems from the individual that were coming in, or at least to be a helping hand to go, this is where you should go to help you, because I know that this sort of organization exists. So yeah, thank you for asking, because that was a very pivotal point in Talking Mental to where it is today.
Okay，哇，咁我想問啦，我都係用翻廣東話問。So 你講開 Talking Mental 即係想 tackle 呢3樣嘢，咁你可唔可以同我哋講下 你究竟即係 talking mental 係 fill 緊邊個 gap 咧？我知道你有去
嗯
過學校啊、公司啊去 promote 呢樣嘢，咁究竟個得着係乜嘢咧？同埋你係點樣做到先令到啲人係會聽你講咧？
嗯，that's a good question，好好嘅問題。咁 talking mental 咧放邊度咧？係我知道，因為我唔係 expert 啦，我唔係呢個咩精神科嗰啲專科醫生，我唔係嘅。
我哋都唔
其實
係。
我冇興趣，我冇興趣做，我覺得呢啲個壓力好大，我冇興趣做。咁我知道，OK，我哋睇下而家嘅情況咧，the problem of mental health 越嚟越多，越嚟越 it is getting bigger and bigger，越嚟越大。跟住咧個 resources 個地方咧係即係有譬如嗰啲精神科專科醫生啊，嗰啲 psychologist 啊，嗰啲 therapist、counselor，而家嗰啲 resources 係。即係多啲政府會放啲錢喺個 resources 地方，因為佢哋知道個 demand 係好高啦。So 而家都有唔同嗰啲方法，即係譬如 VR 啊、AI 啊，唔同嗰啲方法去解決呢啲問題。但係我覺得 talking mental 嘅地方咧係中間嘅地方，最大個問題咧，譬如我入個學校啊，或者入個公司咧，其實個問題都一樣嘅。佢哋知道個問題好大，即係關於精神健康。但係佢覺得，點解嗰啲人唔參加我哋嗰啲 mental health talk 啊？唔參加我哋嗰啲或者如果講緊嗰啲學校，嗰啲學生唔想聽我哋老師講埋呢啲嘢。但係咧，我哋知道個問題喺度 ，because there's been suicides, so they know there's a problem。但係冇人喺度傾，同埋嗰啲 resources，即係嗰啲 school counselors 啊，嗰啲 therapist，冇人去同佢哋一齊傾。So there's a problem。But no one's using the resource. Why? And that's where we come in. So talking mental 個地點咧係個 content creation about how to educate for the problem and then help them to find the resource. So it's like a bridge.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. Well, talking about like how you're gonna be the midpoint of it and you're kind of breaking the stigma away. I just want to say an example of why I feel like the stigma is really huge in Hong Kong. So like growing up, it's always I was in a really healthy, like happy family, but it's always like, life is tough, but it's beautiful. So, just like go on it head on, like figure it out, work hard, and everything will work out in the end, right? And so every time if I had something mental struggles, I didn't even know it was mental struggles because we never really talked about it. So you would just categorize it as like, oh, I'm just going through my ups and downs. This is normal. I am the one who is in charge of figuring out and not anyone else. And so that is why it's really hard to talk about it with your family. And so often, as Steph said, like we turn to our friends. And so it's just like cluelessness, but also you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's your comfort zone, like, because you talk with friends and you feel like they might know what you're going through.
But that's the
Exactly,
key.
exactly.
I think you
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Camille, go on. I want to hear your
Yeah,
thoughts
Camille,
on
go
that.
on.
No, I mean, I was just gonna say to that comment, like, you go to your friends, but your friends are there to support you, but they're just as clueless as you. Like, there's no education for anybody, but that's who you want to go to. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But you know what though? That's why I feel we play well in the middle ground of the content side, because what you're saying essentially is you want to relate to someone. That's why you chat with your friends, is you feel like there's a relatability and a trust factor. That is the disconnect right now. There is no good relatable language around mental health. So for example, if I go on to any podcast, it's all the same thing. Hi, welcome to this essential podcast about, and I'm just like, that's not how any of my friends would talk to me about any other problem. Why would someone talk to me that way? Right? But
Yeah.
that's why and like my parents, bless them, we come from different generations, so we are not talking on the same wavelength. And then also so that's why we are searching for help in a relatable way. And then when you're relatable, all of a sudden it makes more sense. So that's where the disconnect, and that's where really we're trying to focus on talking mental, is understanding what the problem is with the audience, and then making sure that our language in passing the message to them is relatable to that audience member. So sometimes it can come from me, but sometimes a 14-year-old girl doesn't want to hear shit from me. She's like, you don't understand what I'm going through right now. And that's totally fair. So then I need to bring someone in who can relate to her so that she understands the message. So the key with talking mental is it's not about me, or it's about how do we get relatable and make it cool to talk about these issues. Because one of the biggest problems, and this is a huge problem in Hong Kong, we always wait until the very end, or until 最危險嘅時間 before we find help. But we don't do that with anything else in the rest of our life. We don't wake up and go, I'm like 3,000 pounds. I probably should do something. And then confused as to like, how did I get to this point? But that's what we do with mental health. We literally wait until we're at complete breaking point, and then we go and search something, and then we all go. And then you look around. Like, I was at my friend's psychiatrist room, and it was just packed with people, and everybody's in the same boat because they don't know where to go or how to release the pressure valve beforehand. So, yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Oh my God, there's so much that you said, and part of it I didn't fully understand because it's in Cantonese, but I feel like I understand. That I just like, I'm like, yes, yes, we need this. I think especially to your last point, like that's something for me that I struggled with was I would wait until like too late, and for me especially what I had what I struggled with was asking for help. I was like, I'm strong, I'm fully independent, I'm capable, I can figure it out on my own. And similar to you with how you started talking mental, for me, like my studies are in psychology, not clinical psychology, but initially you cover all of that stuff, and then I went more into performance psychology, sports psychology, and and I, mainly because I was like, I need help, and so I'm gonna try to get it. And but I didn't, and then I found it much easier to talk about things after the fact. Like, I would go through the hard stuff and then make it through, and then I was like, okay, now I can talk about it. And I realized as I was starting to talk more about it, um, people were either going through the same thing, and there, like you were talking about, relatability. And so I was like, okay, something definitely needs to change, not just with me, but just the culture about how we talk about these things. And, I started, oh, this works for me. Maybe you should try it. What do you do? And, like you kind of share um, small things like that. And I got to the point now where I think a lot about it as the analogy between, like your physical health and your mental health. Like you were talking about, you don't wait until you're 3,000 pounds to then be like, I should probably go to the gym. People think about their physical health, on a day-to-day basis. Let me do a 30-minute walk. Let me go to the gym. Oh, I need to move my body through yoga. What do I eat? Just all of those things. And then the second you're sick or injured, you go to a doctor, you get physiotherapy, you get a massage, all of that thing. So you think about it on the physical side, you're very on top of it. And I would love for us to get to a point where the mind and the mental health is treated, that same way, where you have, I think about it as like a mind gym or like a mind spa. Like, what are you doing every day that's taking care of your mind? And it doesn't have, so that ideally it's a preventative thing, that you don't wait until you're, depressed or burnt out or having panic attacks or anxiety attacks, but, and it can be really small things. And I think that's what sometimes there's this stigma around it, that it's so much that you have to do. And it could start really small. It could be, let's talk to a friend, let's seek therapy, let's go for a walk, let's take a break, let's disconnect for an hour. Um, and and I think those are like really important things that um, that this is about, that we're trying to have the conversation about this.
Exactly, exactly.
Um, Sorry, I kind of went off
Yeah,
on
that's
a tangent.
no. It makes it,
Yeah.
but that's everything, because
Yeah.
we are, like you said, we're educated in that, but we're not educated in this. And that's actually, there's so many elements that go into mental health, and everybody's different too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you all three have gone through mental health issues, but I'm sure each one of your stories is different because your DNA is different. So genetically, you might have differences that have caused mental health issues, and then your upbringing, your experiences. There's so many elements. It's such an individualistic a journey, especially with your mental health. But that's why it needs to be day to day. It needs to be consistent, and then all of a sudden, the ideation of what mental health means becomes a part of your everyday thing, and then it becomes from zero to positive. Right? I guarantee you, when there potentially becomes a study about how you can, this one kid gets better on their exams by sleeping better and prioritizing sleep and prioritizing all of those things to get them game ready for their exams. People are going to go, you don't see a therapist leading up to your
Yeah.
exam week? Oh, okay. Like, all right, that's cool. I mean, you're not probably going to get the grades that I'll probably get, because that's the, that's why I think, but that's why I think athletes are such a role model, because they're talking about how they're incorporating therapists and psychologists into their training,
Mm.
um, because it's like, why would you not want to enhance this tool to perform at a better, in a better state? And I think people also need to realize that when you're having mental health issues, actually the reasons as to why they're coming are not that far fetched. Just look into the mirror, and if you could actually really look into it, it's not, you don't have to look very far to
Mm-hmm.
realize, yeah, I've been boozing 3 days straight, or I haven't slept properly for 2 days. I've just been fired. I lost someone in my life. I got out of. I'm having a really tough time with a relationship, and I've bottled all of that stuff in. And then something like COVID's happened, which has magnified everything, right? So it's just understanding where and who you can release your pressure valve with, and then you make that a normal thing in your life. And that's what I think it will. And I think it's changed a lot in the West, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
yet in Hong Kong that the case.
Yeah.
但
I mean,
我想講用廣東話講一次頭先 Aaron 講嘅嘢咧，其實我覺得呢個係會係一個好好嘅 promotional line for mental health 咯。Like 你同一個家長同佢講話，哇！我個仔佢去咗睇 therapy 準備佢呢個 interview，然後佢可以 perform 得好啲，因為其實你都聽好多啦，啲小朋友佢哋去到一個 interview 嗰啲，或者其實大人啦，去到 interview 嘅時候都會緊張，唔知點算咁樣噶嘛。咁同佢講咁樣嘅話，其實我相信至少有一半嘅人以上係會即刻心動，覺得不如我都去試一試先啦咁樣。我覺得呢個係一個好有趣嘅講法，亦都係一個完全全新嘅概念去諗 mental health，亦都好似 rebrand 咗呢件事咁樣咯。
冇
That
錯，
is really good. Yeah.
係啊，同埋你諗，如果你第一次講埋出嚟嗰陣時候咧，我個仔睇個 therapist，佢哋 immediately 會諗
即刻
有咩問題？
有咩
有咩問題？
問題？係
我有要去。
有咩問題啊？And then 其實你講其實冇問題啫，但係佢係即係想揾個方法去佢個 performance 想高啲，點去瞓得好啲，點樣食得好啲，點會即係開心啲？因為佢哋有嗰啲 science data 喺度，即係譬如你喺個 high stress situation 嗰陣時候咧，叫 fight or flight。你係 fight or flight 嗰陣時候咧，你個 performance 唔係好好嘅。但係而家你睇下幾多香港嗰啲學生咧，入考試嗰陣時候咧，佢哋都係個 fight or flight mode 嚟㗎。佢哋一定瞓唔夠啦，一定瞓唔夠啦。佢哋一定食得唔好啦，同埋 they have other stresses in their life. So that's that 我諗，如果真係有呢個即係解下呢個諗法咧。That would really help.
Yeah, that would really help.
我諗最大嘅問題係，即係當然啦。如果去到嗰個地步，連家長都話我會主動帶我個仔去，令到佢成績或者乜嘢生活都好啲。咁但係點樣去到嗰個 mindset 咧？即係點樣去改變咧？因為即係有一個例子就係喺香港，即係可能喺屋企喊，或者喺學校喊，或者游泳池喊，啲教練啊家長即刻會係好似有問題啊！即係會即係 from 我自己嘅 experience 啦。就算我喺美國訓練都試過，即係如果一個女仔喊，個教練係唔知點處理啊，係即係佢會即刻懟你去一個女教練度啦，或者喺香港咧就會覺得 你好弱啊，或者你有啲問題啊，咁但係點
嗯哼
樣轉個 mindset 就係一個人喊，其實佢係想舒緩自己嘅情緒，或者一個人同父母講話，我有啲唔開心，係因為佢哋即係可能唔識得點樣去處理佢哋嘅情緒啊，或者有啲 struggle 佢哋講唔出。咁點樣轉個 mindset，令到啲家長或者令到啲教練會接受到其實將呢啲學生或者仔女去見 therapy 或者傾呢啲 mental health 嘅嘢係可以得，即係啲個 switch 喺邊度？我唔知道，或者唔係個 switch 係一個好漫長嘅路。係同學請講。
我成日都有人咁樣同我講過嘅，然後咧我就同佢哋講，其實因為呢個係完全一個自然嘅反應嚟嘅，即係你開心就會笑，你唔開心咁就會喊噶啦。其實有啲咩問題咧，只不過係向兩邊走，完全唔一樣，即係只不過係對抗性啫。所以係一個好自然，你係人類嘅話，你係人，你有感受，你就會有呢啲感覺噶啦。咁即係我覺得係一個你將佢變做，我會同佢哋咁樣講咯，就係其實就係咁簡單一句，即係開心就喊，唔開心就唔係開心就會笑，唔開心就會喊，調翻轉。But that happens too。但係咁其實係冇問題㗎，唔會影響我哋嘅訓練嘅。其實反而你唔去 approach，唔去 address 呢件事嘅話，其實先至會更加影響緊你嘅日常生活咯。咁多數同啲教練嗰啲都唔會講咁多㗎啦，即係一句講完咁樣佢明就明。But I want to hear what Aaron's gonna say about it。
唔係，我覺得呢啲問題冇 quick fix 嘅，其實冇即係冇 switch 嘅。即係突然之間，哇係，我哋都明白呢個問題，都理解喎。OK，we're all fine with it。冇可能嘅，其實因為呢個係個文化嘅 the cultural difficulties，right？呢個係即係我哋香港社會 that's the way it's been。咁我覺得咧係，如果我講真咧，我覺得 it's a long-term plan。但係我哋要 target 而家嘅 youth， 等埋下一代咧，即係而家咧嗰啲 youth 咧，等埋佢哋喺嗰啲家長咧 ，then can start to implement change，because 佢哋自己咧而家咧係開始有嗰啲 education， 有嗰啲 tools 去點解決呢啲問題啊 ，start 了解下 ，OK， 我有香港咧有咩唔同嗰啲 resources 可以解決呢啲問題 ，OK， 我都知道我自己咧長大嗰陣時候咧。有邊度唔開心，但係而家即係之前咧邊度唔開心咧，就 it's actually don't worry about it. Like you said, just life is hard, get on with it, right？但係而家咧，而家嘅社會咧，唔係淨係講香港咧，即係全世界咧係而家變緊啊 ，it's changing. So I think it's 下一 the next generation 下一代嗰啲而家嗰啲 youth， 佢哋20年、30年可以慢慢即係改呢啲諗法。改呢啲stigma 去解決呢啲關於精神健康嗰啲嘢咯。
我諗頭先多謝 Aaron 你咁樣講，因為其實我哋都本身今日就想講點樣 debug 一啲stigma 啦。咁其實某程度都好 comforting。當你咁講話 it's a long-term problem and we're just gonna do it step by step and that is why we set up Mind the Ways and we just wanted to talk and like we took your suggestions just start talking about it, just do what your heart desires and what feels right to you, and that's what we're doing. And we were thinking like, is there anything that we can tell our audience what to do? Is there like a call to action for them? But for now, after listening to what you said, I feel like if anyone that's already listening to our podcast, this is it. Like this is already you taking a step and like listening and maybe share it to your friends and let them know this is happening. And when the audience had to learn about some of the tools that we're going to share on our platform, you can also share that to your friends and become a very relatable language to use between your friends. So thank you, Aaron, for joining us today and chat about like how to remove all this like unnecessary stigma that lies around us for mental health. And hope you guys all enjoyed this episode of Mind the Ways. And so stay tuned, subscribe, follow us, and most importantly, let's talk.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. And I just wanted to say quickly before we finish that I'm very, very, first of all, very honored to be on here. I think you talking about the change and how that can be happening in Hong Kong, it's starting with platforms like this. So I don't think you understand the power of what you three are doing. I think who you are in society, what you stand for. I've spoken to you all, and I've known you. I mean, especially with Camille, I've known for such a long time, and understand how much you're passionate and care about not just your own mental health, but the community at large. And to take this step is a big step, but the people that it will change, to encourage, hey, like, we're smiling and we're talking about this, like we're having a good time, and we're talking about this. That's it. That's the beginning, and then from there, just step by step. So I just want to say thank you to you three for doing what you're doing, and in any way to support what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me on it, and I just want to say how proud of I am to see what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
No,
you. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm getting tears in my eyes. Oh my God. Yeah, no.
Me too.
All right. Well,
Right.
everyone, see you next time.
See you
Very
next
soon.
time.
Thank you, and see you next time.
Thank you.